Welcome to episode 70 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors.
17,000 kilometres over 367 days is some distance to cover. Jamie Ramsay is the author of a new book called Running the Americas. He joins us on this week's show to tell us about his experiences running from Vancouver to Buenos Aires. I can never say that, so you'll probably have to help me out, Deena, after this. While the London Marathon results have also now been finalised, our stats gurus have been poring over the data and found some interesting trends.
And we hear from our listeners as they tell us about their training plans for summer. All of this and more on Marathon Talk.
Right, Deena, how did you survive your chaperone duties?
Oh my, it was a whirlwind. It actually took me a couple days to recover, a lot of sleeping. But I was with my daughter's 8th grade class as we bussed ourselves down to Los Angeles. We went to the Getty Museum, which had a lot of artwork, the Museum of Tolerance, which talked about the very disturbing civil rights movement here in the United States, as well as the Holocaust, and our very delayed response to what German Jews were going through, actually European Jews were going through. And then we went to the Science Museum, and on the way home, we stopped in Manzanar, which was a Japanese internment camp during World War II. So it was a heavy trip. It was a really...
That's a big emotional trip.
Yeah. I mean, forget like trying to make sure that the kids were in their rooms by 10 o'clock lights out and nervous, like sleeping with one eye open to try to make sure that all the kids were accounted for, and hearing pitter patters down the hallway and peeking through the eye hole to see who you could narc on at the wee hours of night. But the whole like just emotion of it all was so heavy. But I will tell you that after the pool party each night, it was a 2-night trip, and sitting in our dining room in the hotel and facilitating discussions was so moving. The kids got it. It was really great.
And it might be a personal question, so feel free to move on quickly. But how did you find the experience? Because, I've often wanted to go. I haven't, right? I would really value going to Auschwitz. I really would value that experience because I think it's important, really important. I actually met somebody who does the guides at Auschwitz. His responsibility is to coach the guides to deliver those sessions. And I asked him all sorts of questions around how they navigate the emotional impact that being a guide at Auschwitz has on people going. It's fascinating. But, for you, how did you find it? How was it?
Well, I was wearing my sunglasses inside, if that's any indication. Thank goodness I brought them going down to Southern California. I was wearing them inside because it was a hard story to understand. But I think the value of it was that you actually heard personal stories. It wasn't just people living in these camps and not being treated well. It was very personal stories. And so that was the moving part. Like it wasn't 6 million people being murdered. It was the story of witnessing those murders happen and the people that survived to tell those stories. So it was so deep. It was really, I think my takeaway was, oh my gosh, here I am into all these environmental issues locally and globally. I go on plogging runs at major marathons with Tina Muir. And so I love taking care of the planet. How are we supposed to take care of the planet when we can't even treat each other with kindness or animals with kindness? So I feel like we have a long way to go in teaching people about compassion and understanding. This is a deep way to get this conversation.
What a way to start the show.
I know. I'm sorry to drag it down, but just be kind
funny,
today.
Aren't they? Us humans, we're funny animals.
Everyone's homework is to be kind to someone. Should we lighten it up and hear about your cycling holiday in Spain?
Well, yeah, it wasn't quite as emotionally, loaded as your trip, but I did require tolerance. No, I didn't. It was great, actually. I really enjoyed it. I had the opportunity to go away with a small group of guys cycling, and they're quite good. And so I was a bit apprehensive about the level and also about the distance we were going to cover. But it was so lovely, my Strava profile has gone like this. It's gone like low, wallop. I think we covered over 600 kilometres
so to get
in about 4 days.
To get a sense of that, are you riding side by side and having conversations, or are you pushing each other and getting competitive?
We're a pro peloton, Deena.
Yeah,
professional
I
peloton.
Love that.
Wannabes. No, some of the time we're just riding, so one of the things about cycling is you can be very social. So, every ride involves stopping for lunch, in a nice local Spanish cafe, and, every ride involved a cortado or cafe bonbon, which I didn't know until I went what a cafe bonbon is. Do you know?
I don't, but I love cortados. But tell me what a cafe bonbon is.
Yeah, get yourself into a little Spanish cafe. I'm sure you've probably got loads in California, and order yourself a cafe bonbon, which is, do you know what condensed milk is?
I love sweetened condensed milk.
Okay, so condensed milk, shot of coffee, and in a little tiny glass. So the condensed milk sits at the bottom and the shot of coffee sits at the top, one kind of on top of the other. Perfect fuel mid-ride. Sweet, caffeinated, away you go. Loved it.
So you don't mix it. So you get the bitterness of the espresso first, and then that thick, creamy deliciousness to
it was great.
To mellow
so
it out.
we did a few big climbs, and I worked quite hard. Cycling is wonderful because it's so much easier on your legs, so you can back-to-back ride. When you think back to your running days of, mileage days, you might have been covering 20 miles in a single day, right? And then trying to do something again the following day with volume, and after a while your legs really hurt. Of course, in cycling you don't get that same kind of pounding effect. So I had a lovely time. Yeah, really good. Weather was really good too. So yeah, what a really good week. Speaking of weather, one of the takeaways from this year's TCS London Marathon was the heat. Now, you may remember previously I mentioned that I'd stood on the finish line of the London Marathon. There were people dropping like flies around me, and it got me thinking a little bit about, the warm conditions. That weekend in London probably kicked off for us a little bit of a mini heat wave. It's been hot in the UK. I wouldn't say it's been... I'd say it's been pleasant, not hot. It's not Southern California hot, but it's been quite warm. It made, for some, might make running a bit of a challenge, can slow us down, definitely slow people down in London. Hottest race you've ever run in, Deena?
Oh, boy. I feel like heat is one thing. Humidity is what really sucks the life out of me, because I live and train in the mountains at 2,400 meters altitude, over 8,000 feet altitude. So for me, the air is really thin where I live and train. So when I go to humid places, it tends to feel like I'm breathing molasses. Really hard to get a good nurturing breath in. But the hottest race had to have been the 2004 Olympic marathon, right? Showing up race evening to 101 degrees. I should have done the math. What's 101 degrees Fahrenheit is like 20...
Blistering. That's what it is.
It's blistering. You could fry an egg on the hood of a car in that kind of... Yeah. Yeah. But in an evening marathon, it's actually getting cooler as the race wears on. So that was nice. I think it was 90 at the start line, and then by the finish, it was in the 70s. So it did cool off quite a bit. But heat is definitely something that adjusts your plans. Yeah,
there's a paper published on running writings by a guy called John Davies. We'll include a link to the paper in the show notes if you want to explore it further. But in it, he says that the optimal running temperature is 9 degrees C or 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So compared to what Athens was, Baltic, it's probably the absolute ideal. But anywhere between 2 to 13 degrees range is almost as good. Now, I assume that John's referring to kind of longer distance running when he says those statistics, because like if you're running short and fast, you like it a little bit balmy, don't you? But humidity, as you said, is also a factor. Did you know, first fact of the week for Marathon Talk, 75% humidity can slow your pace by 6%. So if you're running a 4-hour marathon, that kind of increases your time or slows you down by about 14 minutes. Of course, you have to hydrate yourself optimally as well. So yeah, both heat and humidity slows you down.
Right. And I think there's so many strategies that come into play. I try to tell people, I've said it here on Marathon Talk before, that as you're obsessively refreshing your weather app for those critical training runs or for race day, really just consider that information part of the strategy of moving forward. So you might need to, if you're training, adjust the timing of your run if you have the luxury to do that. If you can get out a little earlier or check in a little later in the evening. The humidity is usually higher in the evening. So if you can get out earlier to get that long run in the hotter days of the summer, do that. Be hydrating before, during, and after. Make sure you're getting in fluids. But as Martin, you have emphasized, let's not overdo that. We got to have a happy medium. Dressing well, wearing lightweight, kind of moisture wicking clothing. I always run in a hat. Make sure the hat is protecting my face. I started doing that years ago, not just to protect my skin, but to not squint, to make sure all your working muscles, your running muscles are working and you're not.
Really? Don't hang on a second. I need to pause there, Deena. Really?
What?
So you went, I'm going to wear a hat to save me energy from doing that.
Yeah,
squinting.
Absolutely.
Really? So I don't need to waste any energy in my eyebrows.
Have you ever crossed a finish line and been like, I have absolutely nothing left? If I could use, like, you don't want to shiver at the
energy
start
from my squinting eyes and direct it to my running legs.
Absolutely,
if only
Martin.
I'd have got
Absolutely. And it saves you from dermatology bills later on as well, wearing that sunscreen, sunglasses, and your hat. We're talking about the heat, but also when it's cold out, you don't want to be shivering at the start line of a race, right? Wear those throwaways so that you don't waste energy shivering. Slow your pace down a little bit. And really perceived exertion is something that you should master as a long distance runner. So all these little things, choosing a shady route to run if you have the luxury to do that, going somewhere, listening to your body, all these things for signs of illness, like, when you feel nauseous or you start to get those goosebumps and you're not sweating, all those little signs to head back home and get into some shade and get hydrated. A lot of strategy is involved in summer training, but maybe we can put that in our social media, our Marathon Talk social media, so people have something tangible to remember how to tackle summer heat.
Yeah. We love a few stats. Running in the heat is backed up by something that Strava put out a few weeks ago. They did a London Marathon data analysis of some of the trends, looking at 2025 versus 2024. Men on average are 8 minutes slower this year. Women on average are 10 minutes slower this year. I guess a lot of that was to do with the heat. I think that London Marathon actually brought out a really great stat too, which I loved. I think it's 49 point something percent male and 49 point something percent female, like roughly the gender differentiation in participants in the race. I can't remember exactly, but it's definitely really driving towards not only greater diversity in the sport, but if we think 1984, Dean, it was the first time the marathon was in the Olympics. Now we're seeing officially the biggest marathon race in the world. In age, this gap in the Strava stats was reflected. The same time gap was reflected in age too. Most age groups ranged between 10 to 12 minutes slower this year than in London last year. And unsurprisingly, the heat was the main explanation for this. Ready? 2024 average temperature was 13 degrees. According to John Davis, that's perfect. Versus this year's much warmer 22 degrees. Less than perfect.
Wow. They also looked at splits, which showed how people really hit the wall. 50% of the runners had a slower second half of their race by more than 10%. I know we're throwing a lot of numbers at you, but these stats are just brilliant that they can really show that these statistics are heat induced, right? That people really didn't have optimal performances, which is why taking the strategies that heat and heat index give you is really critical to what you're wearing, slowing your pace down, hydrating properly, all have to do with race strategy. We can focus on our goals so much that sometimes we panic a little when we hear about the weather, but using it as just simply part of your strategy so that you can make these statistics a happy one when Abbott is collecting them.
Yeah, happy statistics. That's what we like. Strava also said that the 5K point was the fastest part of the course. I mean, gosh, that also means that people went off too quickly. All of these things, so the weather, the London stuff, the experiences of the spring marathons got me thinking a little bit, Deena, about like constructing a dream marathon course. Like, so on cycling, there's like this thing called Zoom. I think they do something on running, but it's also, they have imaginary lands where you can go cycling. So if we could create our own imaginary running, like dream running course, so we could go, oh, there's a marathon in, we'd make the name up of a place, and the course is like this, and everything is absolutely dreamy, like a dream marathon course. What would yours look like?
Oh, well, it would be that ideal 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit for sure. I think it would be a looped course because those courses during Olympic Games or World Championships really condense the crowds. And I love hearing that crowd support. So I think a looped course would be my favorite.
In a city or countryside or mountains? What would be?
I would say countryside, but it has to be historic and visually stimulating because I draw a lot of inspiration from my surroundings. So in Deena Dreamland, it would be historical significance, landmarks of historical significance, because I like to feel like I'm a part of something, not just running in circles. Right? You just want to be connected to like a deeper past, some sort of historical significance, and probably, so not a loop. I think the intimidation with a point-to-point course, which is why that would not be in my dream scenario, is getting bussed out to the start. When we got bussed out to the start of the New York City Marathon last fall, do you remember us looking at each other? We're like, we're still driving. Can you believe we're still in this bus? It's a long way out there.
We got to run all the way back.
Yeah, we got to run back to where we just started from. It seemed a little daunting. So that kind of psychs me out sometimes.
Gosh, we were saying at the beginning of the show, I had a little drink with Hugh Brasher, the race director of the London Marathon, in the week, and he was talking. I was explaining that you and I ran New York together, and he said, tell me about the New York experience and how it's different to London. And I almost crumbled under the pressure.
Yes.
I thought, what do I say that makes it so good? And because I really did enjoy New York, but at the same time, I really love London. So I spoke about
your heart will always be in London.
Yeah,
Martin.
it's like
we know
in Paris,
that.
isn't it? So So I was talking about how the different boroughs in New York are represented by the people and the feel and the sort of experience of the space and place that you run through at any one time. And Hugh kind of sat there and listened, and then he's like, and that's something we really want to create in London too. And it got me thinking about this year in London of how there is a sense of, real change in diversity of representation in London, and that participants are different, and the recognition of the makeup of London is something that the race wants to reflect. I think they're doing a really good job of that. Right. One final question for you, Deena. Focused head on. If you could do a marathon pancake flat, point to point, 42.2 kilometres, straight line. Bang, straight line, all the way, point to point.
Mm-hmm.
Or 42 separate 1 kilometre laps on the flat. Which did you do?
Oh,
square,
boy.
Like, so 42 kilometre laps. Or
you're challenging my dream, aren't you?
Straight line.
Mm-hmm. You're challenging yeah, I think now I feel like I'm hypocritical. I choose the straight line because I need the stimulus. Like I don't want to be passing the same thing all the time. But Can you line it with a lot of people? Like we just need to charter in fans of the sport so that there's like constant cheers. Do that. That's
okay, so we've gone point to point. Right, let's move on. It's a good chance to welcome our guest to this week's show. It's Jamie Ramsay. Back in episode 294 in 2015, we chatted to a runner, adventurer, and author Jamie Ramsay. At the time, he was on the border of Colombia crossing into Ecuador as part of this incredible running adventure. And some 10 years later, he's just published a book called Running the Americas, about an epic solo and unsupported run across 2 continents. That's 17,000 kilometres, 14 countries, 367 running days. We wanted to get him back on to find out what he's been up to in the last decade. Welcome back to Marathon Talk, Jamie.
Thank you very much. It's great to be chatting again. Can't believe that last time we chatted, I hadn't even finished my first big adventure. So, yeah.
I was thinking, just as we were, kind of pre-recording about what we might talk about, and our paths have crossed a little bit, in the last 10 years. And it was you. You reminded me actually that you were in the throes of the run last time we chatted. Like, just how does that work in terms of, here I was on the border of Colombia and Ecuador, and suddenly you're recording a random podcast with people you don't know?
Well, it's kind of a weird one because you're thinking like you have this podcast, which is obviously very exciting, especially back in 2014, 15. I was
15.
like, oh, I'm doing my first proper podcast. I have to get to a town where they actually have internet connection. And it was an excuse to stay in a nice hotel rather than some dodgy hostel or in a tent or something like that. So I remember I think in my book, it's on page 230, where I was like, right, I'm in Ipiales. I've got this chance to take a day off, get ready, do this recording. So, but for me, it was actually strange because then I listened to it while I was still running. So it came out while I was still running. Yeah. And it was amazing to it allowed me to reflect on the first half of my run slightly while I was doing the second half of the run. So it was kind of a nice arrogantly to use my own podcast to inspire me to keep going later on, as I was because it was in a difficult place when I listened to it when it came out.
Well, I guess that's one thing, about the essence of the types of challenges that you do, and they really are personal challenges, and also they're self-supported challenges. So a couple of things to give context to the next 20 minutes or so. Like, why bother? And what makes the kind of challenges that you do unique or different or more challenging?
So the why was, it stems back to basically, I found myself at a place in London where I was following this path in my life, which was it's about money, it's about living in London, it's about chasing that kind of corporate dream, which I just had no passion about. And that lack of passion was leading me to, one, feel dissatisfied, unhappy, and ultimately not really liking myself. So I turned to sport and endurance. It progressed, started off as 5Ks and kind of worked up to like Ironman 70.3s and long distance swims. And it was like, I was kind of doing that to get a sense of achievement in my life. And then to numb the pain, I was over rehydrating in the pub. And they kind of all came together in this kind of toxic explosion, which made me realize I had to make a change. And it was remembering the feeling I get from running. I'd done this. I'd entered a race in Vietnam that had been cancelled, so I decided to go out and just do the distance solo. And I remember the feeling of self-worth, kind of being proud of myself when I got to the end of that run. And when I hit this toxic explosion in the city where I'd gone out and got absolutely hammered and woke up on the floor of the bathroom at work, I kind of thought I need to get back to that purity, that feeling of happiness and contentment and satisfaction, which running gives me. So the journey I embarked on there was no idea of a documentary, no idea of a book at that time. There was nothing like Instagram stories and reels didn't even exist back in those days.
Yeah, of course.
So it was a pure journey of discovery of who I was. And then I think I just wanted to go and explore the world and meet people. And the thing that I've tried to put into my book most is the overwhelming positivity and generosity and kindness of people. And it really restored my kind of faith in humanity. So this run allowed me to do that. And what kind of separates from, I think there's quite, the world of long distance running has become quite popular at the moment. And we see a lot of it on Instagram, a lot of it kind of on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And I think, that it's all quite curated. It's all quite planned. It's all quite like there are intentions behind it. And I think what sets mine apart is the solo and unsupported element of it, where I'm not trying to be famous. I'm not trying to make money, much to my partner's disappointment. But I'm out there because I want to push myself. And the running is a very small element of that challenge, like finding clean water, finding food, safe places to sleep. But coming up against challenges like I'm going to run across the Atacama Desert or run across the Andes or run across the center of Iceland or whatever it is I'm doing, like whichever challenge in running capacity, it's like doing it alone and having the self-confidence to step out and be able to hold yourself throughout it. And I think that's where I get the most worth, like from what I do.
Okay, I love the self-supported element of what you do. If we let's just stick to that first adventure for the moment, because it's a whopper, right? It's a big one. When did you decide that was going to be a thing? Running those. Did you started in Vancouver and you finished in Buenos Aires? Is that right?
Yeah.
And you ran the 17,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
Took you over a year. Like, when were you sat in your kitchen going, oh yeah, that seems like a crack? How did you come up with that as a thing?
It was pretty simple. Like, so basically it was November when I decided I had to make a change or I was spiraling down. It was New Year's Eve that I probably came up with the idea I was going to quit my job and do a massive run. And then, honestly, I sat down, I looked at going around the world, and I was realistic with myself. I was like, I don't have the money, the skills, I don't want to have a team. I want this all to be solo. So passports and visas and all that kind of stuff was too difficult. Running from the top to bottom, again, was too difficult for me. And then I just looked at a map and thought, Vancouver, Buenos Aires, 2 languages, passport will get you into every country. Everyone's like, why didn't you run from Alaska to Ushuaia? It's like, I wasn't doing it for a record. I wasn't doing it as a first. I was doing it because it's the journey I wanted to do. And it seemed like a nice journey. And quite frankly, I was paying for it. So I thought I'd just do what I wanted to do. So yeah, that was the and honestly, I went and sat in the pub with a pint and a laptop and just looked at the map and was like, right, that's my route. And it literally took a day to plan. And then I was like, that's it. Wow. And then I never looked at anything in between the 2 points. Yeah. I always just ran and maybe planned on every 2 days ahead. That was probably tops, unless I had something I had to hit for whatever logistical reason. Because I learned very quickly at the beginning that if I said to myself, run 30 kilometers a day, then all you're going to do is run 30 kilometers a day. By taking away any restrictions, I suddenly realized that I could run a lot further and I cover a lot more distance. And so I kind of just let my body and my mind and how much I was enjoying it dictate what I did on a kind of day-to-day kind of way. And the adventure changed very much because I started off as this kind of guy who just left the city, and I basically drank my way all the way to Panama. Like I would stop and have beers and party, went to raves, but still getting up and running like 50, 60K the next day kind of thing. And then I did the second half of the journey sober. So
Okay.
there's a real kind of disconnect between the two, which is actually really nice because I did one of them was like just an adventure, and the second half I had 178 marathons to do in 178 days to get to Buenos Aires on the date I wanted to get there. So there was a kind of different feel to the adventure, which was quite nice.
A little bit more focus.
Yeah, a little bit more focused, but also I had like in that 178 marathons, I had to run across the Atacama, over the Andes, through the Sechura Desert. I had to do kit collections. I had parasites. Like there's so many things I had to overcome to be able to hit that.
Would you look back? So we're 10 years, a separate question is like 10 years. That's a lot of book, right? There's a lot gone on between writing. That's a long lead in time for the book. We're seeing the book come to fruition now. And it must have been quite interesting, writing the book over that period and then having it publishing now and then trying to talk about something which happened a decade ago, but your life, so your life now isn't where it was a decade ago for many different reasons. One of the things that you have been able to do is to maintain some continuity with a sense of the factors which caused you to shift your priorities, your life priorities. So often we might see, I'm going to go and do something. My life feels a little bit upside down. So I want to try and right the balance of my life. So I'm going to go and do something, and I do it, and then I come back, and before long, it's upside down again. So a question is, I think, and I may not know this entirely, but I think there's been some maintenance of continuity and sustainability of that shift in approach over the last decade, right?
Yeah.
So how have you been able to do that? Because you've been constantly kind of setting yourself these new challenges. So it started with running the Americas, right? The book is out 2 months ago, but the last decade has been framed by that experience.
Yeah, and so I think the adventure itself allowed me a good amount of time to understand myself better. And I think one of the questions I get a lot is, you must be very mentally strong to be able to do an adventure like that. When the actual truth behind it is, I find the mentally challenging bit is the bit when I'm not doing it. So when I'm on these adventures, I am in it, I'm focused, I am delivering it, and I am fulfilled and happy every day. When I'm at home, and it's hard for loved ones, like when I'm at home, I find that very difficult. So I knew that for me to be happy and nice to be around, I need to set a framework in place where I continue the medicine, basically, and every year do something big that is going to make me feel like I'm pushing myself, I'm learning about myself, and kind of growing and developing. And by doing that, I became big, because when I was running the Americas, I was pushing a stroller. I'm now pushing a stroller because I have a son. So I've got to be able to continue being someone I'm proud of, so I could be a good role model to him going forward. And I also noticed that because I'm genuinely doing it out of a passion for something I love doing, and that other people kind of latch onto the ride and they go off and do their things. And that brings me such a huge amount of satisfaction. If it's just like one person who says, I took some advice from you and I did this thing. I'm like, oh my God, this is all worthwhile because that person's had that experience. And so I've just really, really tried to kind of, yeah, as I said, just keep the medicine coming in. So,
It's like you
and the
can't
book
not
thing
do
was
it,
great because
isn't it?
sorry?
It's like you can't not do it. The question is
Yeah.
not why do you do it? The question is why do you not do it? I mean, it's a bit like, I've been running a long time. Running's been a part of my life for 40 plus years. And I meet a lot of people who go, oh, this running's amazing, isn't it? And you go, yeah, it really is. I'm glad you found it, or it's found you, So the question isn't, oh gosh, how do you do that? It's how can you not do it when you know?
Yeah. And people ask me, like, do you still get the same feeling from running? It's like, yes. Like, I still jump, skip, shout, sing when I'm running because it brings such an amount of joy to me. So if I can weave that into doing adventures, it's a win-win situation for me.
So you brought something up which I'm interested in too, and I've got a bit of personal experience in balancing this, and I don't always get it right, but there's an element of selfishness to your approach, right? And I don't know if you've had this before in questions, but when it's you and you, being away on the roads is magical, isn't it? And I totally agree. In the last, 19 months, your life has changed with, now it's not just you and you. Yep. How or what has that done to your approach to, say, the next 10 years, right? So in the previous 10 years, the passion and the excitement and the capacity and the ability to release yourself to go on extended adventures and challenges to, bring what you need to your life. Yeah. And then in turn, perhaps to others around you, you've been able to do. You're going into the next decade.
Yeah.
And you might have some different challenges around that. I just wondered if you've thought about those.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I try and tell myself is that I've got to be grateful for the decade I've just had. That was an amazing decade. So not many people get that opportunity. I've had it. Be grateful for it. Don't begrudge the fact you're not getting it. You're in an amazing situation. You have a young child who you are getting to bring up. So don't you can never be negative about it. Secondly is the recognition of the fact that I need it. I need the adventure thing. So it's how do I reframe that going forward and different. So right now is not the time to go off for a 3-month adventure. I know that. But I have a partner who's also an adventurer. So she understands my need. So I would say at the moment for the last 19 months, I would say I've been microdosing. Last night I was camping on Dartmoor.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the approach of. So when I used to run a lot, and my wife and I's experience not that dissimilar to yours really, although we were lucky to do athletics for a while. We've now got 3 children, so the world's wholly more complicated. And we couldn't do those things. We couldn't do those things that we did, and actually, neither would we want to. We may return to them in some way, but neither would we want to, because the season we're in is one of being parents and engaging in a parenting journey, right? So you don't always have to tackle these immense challenges. You don't always have to run incredible distances or achieve what seems like impossible feats, many of which you've done, but you can still get this almost the same feeling from a much lighter experience. Would you agree in that? Because I'm thinking about everybody now sitting in their offices, looking at their walls, listening to the show, going, I'd love to be able to down tools and clear out for a year, but I simply can't. How do you put it in such a way that everyone can feel like there's something for them?
So it's a collaboration. So my other half, she wants to go off and do stuff. I want to go off and do stuff. So we have a very open, we chat about it. So she's going off to do an adventure soon, which is about 3 weeks. So I will look after our son for that time, and then I'll go off and she'll look after our son. But in the meantime, like last night, I met up with another parent who wanted to go on an adventure as well. So we timed it. We like looked at our diaries, looking after kids, and went right. If we leave at 5 p.m., we can be on the moor by 6 o'clock. We can do a 3-hour hike, camp, be back in the car by 9:30, and we're home by 10. We're not being selfish, but we are still allowing ourselves to get that thing. And I think what's quite nice for slightly bigger stuff is the landscape of adventure sports, endurance, running, cycling, whatever, has progressed quite a lot over the years, that there are now so many opportunities where you can go and do things like the Atlas Mountain Race cycling, where you go away and you're there for 12 days and you can come back. So you're not really having to check out and go off and do these things. And there's lots more trail running events, which I'm now, I parked some of that for a while I did bigger adventures, but I got a massive amount of enjoyment out of doing them. So just bring them back in for this period of my life kind of works. So I think it's very easy to say, oh, I can't do it, but that's just being lazy, because there are so many opportunities to do it. And I can completely understand why there are so many people who love marathons, because it is a distance that gives you such an amazing sense of achievement. There is a very easy, not easy, there is a very easy to plan, schedule, training system to go in to do it, to allows you to travel. It allows you to achieve. It allows you to stay healthy. And, I personally believe that the marathon's great, but the training's the fun part. Like, that's the bit that takes months. And you go running all the way, you go run wherever you can, and you get that. So I kind of, at the moment, I think I just have to focus on that kind of things. Maybe I'll still, I've only ever done 2 road marathons. I've run the equivalent of 500 marathons.
Yeah. I looked at some of your, you some of your previous marathons, the equivalent of 500 marathons or over, actually. But I think you've done Stockholm back in 2004, Paris in 2006. It strikes me that you've maybe got some major city marathons still to bag.
I think I probably do. And, it was nice. I've done some alternative ones, like Lewa Safari Marathon was awesome. The Medoc Marathon, best marathon in the world, I have to say. I'd like to. It's always been a dream. And everything I've ever done, like a sense of achievement, would be to do a sub-3 marathon.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think now's probably a good time to start looking at that, because I've got lovely places to run around where I live, and I can fit it around having a child and being a good dad. So, maybe that's the challenge I should be looking for, and just be very grateful that I can make that my challenge. Like, I don't have to go and run across a continent to be happy.
No, and that is really important, isn't it? I can go for a half an hour run and feel like I've loved it. Really enjoyed it. That's enough. I don't need to run, 2 hours or to Belgium and back. Not that I would. I don't know why I said to Belgium. So it is important to break these things up into something which is realistic and achievable for everyone. If you look back at that, 10 years ago at that journey, what would you say is the single greatest piece of personal learning that you still apply today? So, it might be you got something through an experience, or, there's something which, an element of the way in which Jamie now lives, which will stay with him forever in everything he does, that the catalyst for that was a moment in that run, or a series of moments in that run. And what is it?
It sounds like corny, but it's 100% the kindness of strangers and passing that on. Like, the one thing I learned was every single time I found something a little bit difficult, there would be someone there who would help me, or they would unknowingly do something that would lift me. And I met a few people who were actually much more, they would come past me and they'd say, here is $20. I want you to enjoy this $20 and I want you to pass it on to another person further down the line so they have that $20. And that kind of philosophy has stuck with me. So if I see people doing stuff, I now tell myself, stop, ask them if they need help. Can you do anything to help them get there? It's passing things on, I think, is the main thing for me, which is why I think I love trying to give people advice on what kit to use and how to train and all this kind of stuff, and like how to pull together expeditions, because I know how much I got out of it, and the best way that I can pass that on is trying to help other people do it, because then it'll kind of carry on. So for me, it is corny, but that the whole book is just about people being great. And I've done 54,000 kilometers of human powered travel now, and I don't think I've ever had a proper negative interaction with a human being. And I think when we watch all the stuff on Instagram and all this, there is a lot of anger and like tension and all that. It's just not there in the real world. It's there in the ether, but the people are nice. And that's my main thing. I've always been told I'm too trusting.
Largely, people are nice. There you go. Jamie's takeaway.
Yeah.
People are nice. They can be, right? Obviously, in some of the areas that you ran through, there might be a lot of fear, a lot of tension, potential for aggression, potential for aggravation and disruption and political unrest. And, there's a lot of that in a lot of the areas that you ran through. Yet despite that, you're still saying at the heart of people is a sense of goodness.
Yeah. And I think, because one of the great things about running long distances is if there's a dodgy area, you don't run around it because that's adding kilometers. You run straight through the middle of it and you face everything head on, and you get to see a real cross section. And there are times when I'm embarrassed to say I'd see someone dressed in a certain way or something. I think, oh God, there's going to be a problem here. And they turn out to clap as I come running past or ask me what I'm doing or where I'm from. And you're like, wow, I had that preconception wrong in my head. So, yeah. But the other thing I think I also learned was we are always capable of more than we think we are. So that was, ever since I did the run, a lot of people were like, where do you go next? And it was like, well, I can push myself more in this direction. And then when I feel I've pushed that boundary enough, we'll just change the boundary and go in a different way and push it that way. And I just like to continually push. Every adventure I've done since has had a pre-thought out motivation for doing it to challenge myself in a different way, which is why I haven't stuck to just running. It's why I've done mountaineering, wilderness hiking, bike packing. I'm now doing gravel racing, mountain bike racing. Like I try to push myself. I'm never going to be the master of any of them, but I'd like to be able to think that I've given them all a really good go. And that comes from the confidence that running the Americas gave me to be able to push myself in ways I didn't think I was able to perform. So.
And if we want to get a copy of Running the Americas, best place through your website. I actually think you'll sign it as well, won't you?
So if you're in the UK, I can do signed copies of the book. And a lot of people have been actually buying them as presents for other people who are runners and like asking for little inscriptions in. So I can do that, like if people want that. Or if you're somewhere else around the world, then it's available on Amazon.
Okay.
And the book is, hopefully it's a kind of enjoyable journey through the Americas. So a lot of at the moment when people are telling me about the book, they're telling me where they are. It's all about the reference of where they are.
Yeah.
Which is nice because it brings back so many memories to me about that journey.
And that is via jamieramsay.net. If you go there, it's really simple to find the link to look at the book. And one of the things Jamie does is a couple of photo albums that kind of tell the story, so you can really get a feel for that journey. Right. So Jamie, we also said, you've kept this going. You've made it sustainable in your life through running, through cycling, through hiking, and there's been some shifts in the focus and the emphasis and adaptations. You rode from New York to San Francisco in 2022. Did the Atlas Mountain Race in 2024 last year, both on your bike, 10 marathons in 10 days last year in 2024. If you're going to project forwards, is there something that's under your skin?
So I've got some running I still want to do. Shorter kind of. I'd love to do things like the Bob Graham, the Ramsay round. It's got my name on it, so I've probably got to do it. The Paddy Buckley. Let those kind of long distance, the Slovenian Alps. I'd love to do as a kind of because I fast hike the Pyrenees, and I'd love to go and do that in other places. But if there was one thing, it's not running related. I'm sorry, is I'd love to row an ocean. I just don't have the
Wow.
budget to
Okay.
do it, but it's my original inspiration was Ben Fogle and James Cracknell.
Yeah.
That was the book that I read that inspired me to want to be adventurous. So I'd love to like go back and like actually do what they did.
Yeah.
My partner is actually, she's got the record for rowing around the UK. So I've got a good coach at home. So
Wow. Yeah. Maybe there's something in a family adventure. You know, that was something that Liz and I we've tried to build that into our lives. You know, having adventures with our kids. So our kids are often involved in things, but you know, something like that with your combined set of experiences, and you know, giving your son, so that your son doesn't reach that point in life that you reached, because it's already such a part of his life, and you know, you'll have placed that there. Anyway, you know, food for thought. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us again, just with a decade off in Marathon Talk. It's been a pleasure to catch up.
look forward to speaking in 10 years' time.
Jamie has very kindly given us 3 copies of his book to give away. To win one of them, simply answer the following question. How many countries did Jamie visit whilst running the Americas? How many countries did Jamie visit whilst running the Americas? If you know the answer to that, email marathontalk@World Marathon Majors. That's wmmajors.com. And the random number generator will pick 3 winners ahead of next week's show.
With the spring races out of the way, we've asked our followers on social media what their summer training plans are. Christian Warwick says, building a fundament for the fall marathons, regular strength training, and slowly building up the mileage whilst also trying to improve my speed. Fundament, that is not a type. It's not short for fundamental.
You had a little
It
giggle
wasn't
then.
a typo. So we're looking up fundament in the dictionary
I
because
didn't
it
know
was
what it meant. You
intentional.
didn't know what it meant
So the
either.
first time I'm going to take the privilege of saying that the first definition is the foundation or basis of something. Fundament.
Great. That's great. That is the very first definition of fundament, according to the dictionary definitions from Oxford Languages. Deena, what's the second
No, Martin,
definition?
that was your turn. It was your turn. So fundament is either the foundation or basis of something, which I'm assuming Christian intended, because the other definition is a person's buttocks.
Ooh.
Their rear
then.
side. So I'm sure Christian is not trying to build their buttocks unless you need that added strength for power output. That could also be. So
your fundament.
Your fundament. Building your fundament.
Your
Squats.
fundament.
Squats are a good way to build your fundament.
You've seen this fundament? Anyway, James Shawnee says, getting strong, more strength and conditioning needed. That is for summer. That's actually a strange one for summer. Often, summertime is about like getting faster, trying to increase my leg speed, like getting out and doing some shorter, faster workouts as a little break in between kind of marathon seasons, between spring and autumn, but not for James. He wants to get strong, more strength and conditioning. The beach is that way, James Shawnee. Go on.
No, I actually think that that it's a great insight into what summer training could be, because so many of us intend to start stretching, right? Intend to begin a strength training routine. And this is a really good time of year. You're not locked into your spring or fall races. Summer offers a really great time of year to get that habit down that you want to create, whether that's getting more fruits and veggies at the grocery store to power your runs, whether that's getting in a stretching routine, getting to bed earlier, starting that strength training, getting some speed under your belt so you don't have that slow plod of the long runs still in your legs. I think it's summer offers a really great opportunity to add to our running routines in a thoughtful way.
What a statement. Add to your running routine in a thoughtful way. I like that. Gaining like fitness and strength over summer in a thoughtful way. That's the sort of thing I reject entirely over summer because it's like sun's out, guns out, let's go. That's kind of the approach.
Okay, so as I say that, I'd like to ask you, Martin, because you're a father of 3. As summer approaches, kids are out of school. How do you find time for your own training? You still have to work. I mean, our lives don't stop when our kids are home all day. So how do you get your training in? What are some strategies that you can share with us?
I just leave the kids at home in front of a computer. I've got one of those bowls for the dog, which has got rotational days on it. As long as I put enough food in for 3 kids, I can just lock it away. No, I don't. Before we get complaints, of course I don't. I think you just have to be organised with your time, and I'm reasonably organised with my time, although I do have a terrible, terrible knack to try and fit in more things than I'm actually capable of in a given time frame. So I look at something and think, there's loads of time, I can do all of that. And Liz looks at me and goes, no, you can't. You need to chop that ambition in half. And so then I can sort of structure the day. Also, my kids are getting a little bit older, so I try and double play stuff. So if they're at football, for example, then I'll go for a little 40-minute run whilst they're at football. So I try and use that time wisely, I think, is probably the answer for that. Sticking with our community notes, last couple of shout outs, and I'm afraid I've done you here like a kipper, Deena. Sarah Hale is aiming for a Boston qualifying time at Grandma's Marathon, which takes place in a month. Good luck, Sarah. And David Farrell from Houston, Texas, starts his taper ahead of the Rock and Roll San Diego Marathon on June the 1st.
And finally, Christier Grayson has a busy summer plan. They say I'll be pacing the 140 group at the awesome Cork City Marathon on June bank holiday weekend, then pacing the stunning Dingle Marathon half 145 group early September. Then in October, they'll be pacing the 330 group at the brilliant Irish Life Dublin Marathon late October. I'll do a few 5 and 10Ks in between to keep his legs sharp. Oh my gosh, that is a lot of pacing, a lot of running.
So I'm like, maybe I'm confused here. What's that 140 group and the awesome Cork City Marathon?
Yeah, is that just 140 pace? Maybe they're doing the half marathon there.
Maybe.
Is there a half marathon involved in the Cork City Marathon?
Maybe. What I particularly like is the amazing descriptive words in front of these. Maybe these should be the actual official race sponsors. Awesome.
Christier likes adjectives. I love that.
Like that. Awesome Cork City Marathon, the stunning Dingle Marathon, and the brilliant Irish Life Dublin Marathon. Good work. Right. I think that's about it for another episode of Marathon Talk. This is your first time listening, don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favourite podcasting platform. You can also follow our social channels for more. Search Marathon Talk on your platform of choice. You can follow us at Marathon Talk too.
Thanks, Martin. What are you doing in the next couple of weeks as summer gets heated up?
Hopefully a little bit more running. I've got a little injury at the moment, Deena.
Is it a cycling injury?
No. Do you know what it is? Do you want to know what it is?
It's your hamstring again.
No.
Am I going to guess or are you going to tell me?
You can guess if you want. We can play that game.
No. Go ahead and tell
I'll give you one more guess. Guess my injury.
Okay. It is an overuse sweeping injury, gardening injury.
No, it's definitely not that. It's a running in the wrong shoes injury.
Oh.
So I was late. I went to London. I was late for my train. And I was like, if I don't make this train, I'm going to be another hour late at home. I'm going to be 10:30 at night before I get back. So I was running full tilt and I was running in shoes I shouldn't be running in, which makes me sound like I was in like 4-inch heels. I wasn't. I was just in little flat, sneakers. But yeah, definitely not like plimp soles. Definitely not good for my Achilles. So I've just inflamed my heel a little bit. So yeah, I've been off. Well, I just haven't quite felt right with it. So hopefully over the next few days, I'm letting it settle and then we'll see. Back into a bit of running, get into the sea again. I've swum a couple of times in the sea, which is great because it's starting to warm up. So yeah, here we go. What about you? What are you up to?
Well, summer is in effect and all of the snow on our trails are starting to melt. So if anybody needs me, I'll be on the trails running. That is my jam. I thrive on trail running, just exploring new places. So that's where you'll find me. So for all of you out there, hitting the trails, hitting the roads, enjoy the run wherever it takes you.